All right, just got a small sample of some of the CDs I have in my collection. I have many more, probably close to 100, but this is just a small sample of a dozen or so. Got your Silverchair, first Foo Fighters record, Aerosmith, REM, Pixies, Clash, Weezer, Alice in Chains, Tripping Daisy. Uh, Absolutely phenomenal album here by Soundgarden. Super Unknown. Yeah, I have a lot of these. I had even more CDs, but over the years, some of them get stolen and lost or broken, whatever. I wish I still had those, but it is what it is. I've had, yeah, I kept most of them, so it's pretty cool. I kind of wish sometimes I had these on like vinyl record, but I grew up in the CD era, so it is what it is. But yeah, this is what I'm going to talk about, not necessarily music, but just nostalgia. That's what this video is going to be. So let's get on with the rest of the video. All right, folks, welcome back. Denny here again. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for turning off CNN and turning on the Denny Sensation YouTube channel. Yeah, it's thanks again for subscribers and all the new people. I check the analytics and tells you which country people are watching from, and it seems like recently I'm getting more and more people from Australia, more Aussies. I love the Aussies. Fuck off, eh? Fucking Aussies. He fell into the water. Shark grabbed him. Working on my Aussie accent, but yeah, I love the Aussies. They're no nonsense people. And speaking of Aussies, do you guys remember this band Silverchair? I heard them the other day, and it triggered this idea of putting this video together. And I've got my Woodstock shirt, which is another part of our music culture history, which triggers a lot of nostalgia. So yeah, nostalgia is something that I find very intriguing and interesting. I just know the emotions it brings up, and it's kind of brings about a conversation of whether nostalgia is useful and why we feel these things, and if it's a net positive, which I would say yes, it is. I don't know the exact science behind it. I didn't bother to look why we feel these things when we listen to the music of our formative years, and why we kind of go back to it. I mean, it's interesting because if it didn't mean anything, looking into the past, experiencing the past through music or movies or books, culture, clothing, all that stuff, it wouldn't exist. You wouldn't have radio stations playing songs from this album, or you won't hear REM on the pop stations. I have a Sirius XM radio, and I listen to, there's like 100 channels. I listen to all the different stuff on there, and the vast majority of it is older. And even though I try to open up and listen to some new stuff, it's just doesn't really do it for me, even though objectively some of it is good, well crafted, well written music. It just doesn't have the same impact, doesn't have the same emotion, and it doesn't really have what you would call a response that brings it. It doesn't elicit any strong response. It's just kind of there. The music's there, and you're not really that into it. I'm sure if you're young and you're just discovering new music, you probably feel different, because I think a lot of nostalgia has to do as a matter of when and not exactly what was happening. Although it's interesting that even the younger generation is really going back and listening to and being blown away and impressed by old music, like this Alice in Chains album, or Nirvana is a big one, of course. So maybe there's something to the music itself, and if it had come out in this era, would it still have the same impact? Maybe it just happened to be the golden age of music. Now, I also listen to a lot of stuff from the 60s, 70s, and all the way up through the 90s. So for me in particular, just because of my age and being a young Gen Xer, there's certain music like these grunge, alternative things had a special effect just because I was a teenager at the time. But objectively as well, it's excellent music. It was very exciting, different, fresh. It was rock and roll, but it wasn't really your parents' rock and roll. It wasn't the Stones or the or Zeppelin or Black Sabbath or anything like that. But even though I love that stuff tremendously, I'm a fan of everything: metal, hard rock. I love bands like, even the more poppy side, like I love bands like Boston and The Knack and Thin Lizzy, and then the heavier stuff like Sabbath, Metallica, Ozzy, Motley Crue. The list goes on and on. The hair bands, even though the grunge era we weren't supposed to like the hair bands, but I love Crue and Poison and Cinderella and all these things. I kind of just appreciate it all for what it is. It's good for different reasons, and some of it you may think that it's lacking for certain reasons, or it could be considered silly now, or whatever, the spandex and makeup and all that. And then of course a lot of the grunge alt rock gets a little bit of a rap for being kind of somber and self-loathing and the angst and confusion that was happening. But that's kind of what made it special, is because that's what you usually feel as a teenager, as a young adult, is these things. And then you have music that comes out that expresses that. Of course you're gonna really latch on like a leech and just ride that out and have a musical journey and an experience that's basically unforgettable. I mean, I was obsessed with some of these albums. Like, I don't have it here, but the Smashing Pumpkins, Siamese Dream, it just sounds so 90s grunge, that guitar tone and the melodies and kind of the heaviness with the melodic parts, and just very unique. And I think that's why I go back to a lot of this stuff, and it's been a part of my life now for most of my life. These songs come on the radio, it's still crank it up. It's not like, oh, I've heard this song 100 times, boring, turn it off. I don't get that. And I also wonder if you are an older person and you had same experience of music of the 60s and 70s, if that's the case, if it just never gets old. It holds up even now when you're 60 years old, and just as much as it was when you're 20. Like if you were into this Beatles record, or the Doors, another band I like, late 60s had some amazing stuff. Hendrix, just completely out of this world. The stuff from the late 60s compared to the early 60s. So yeah, that was a special time. I don't doubt that. The whole Led Zeppelin ride, the entire decade of the 70s, I'm sure was some of the craziest, wildest, I'm sure, musical experiences people have had as far as concerts or just listening to these albums at the time. I mean, listening to Zeppelin 4 in 1971, like, was there anything even like that, even close? Up until then, probably not. Just mind-blowing stuff. So yeah, and then of course it brings you back to where you were. Like, I remember listening to Silverchair, not this album but the first album. It was I was first learning how to drive, and I first got my license, so I was listening to Silverchair and this Foo Fighters album, and this was like probably 1996, which was an interesting year for music, definitely. That was around the time I really got into music and collecting these albums. I did even before, I think I started around 1992, 93, when I was listening to the Pumpkins and actually Stone Temple Pilots and lots of Nirvana. I became obsessed with that band, and even more obsessed after Kurt passed away. I got into their B-sides and some of the stuff that wasn't as big as Nevermind or In Utero. So that was a whole nother rabbit hole I went down. That I think there was probably a 6-month period where I listened to nothing but Nirvana in 1994, 1995. So that was interesting. Yeah, just a big part of my life, this music and the nostalgia of it. And I'd like to know what your experience was. Maybe you're my age and you can relate to these specific albums, or let me know what some of your favorite albums were at the time, which had impact on you, which albums made you happy and got you through tough times. Actually, believe it or not, a lot of REM, I have a few of their albums, and there's just something about their music that really got me through some difficult periods. There's just something so signature about their sound and how they express themselves through the music. It's very interesting. And yeah, it takes me right back to that time and brings back all the old emotions I was feeling right at that time. It's almost like time traveling, listening to some of these albums. And this Clash record is one that I discovered a little bit later on. I wasn't a huge fan in my teens, but it's a band that I really got into in my 20s, and now that I'm in my 40s, even that has been a while. So even listening to the Clash reminds me of my 20s. It's just kind of interesting because this album came out in the 70s. I don't think I was born yet. So yeah, there's all that stuff. And then of course movies, I talked about that a little bit on a couple other videos. But I love watching old movies, even some of the ones I have seen already. I'll watch them again. But I'm just discovering new movies, actually, from the 80s and 90s that I haven't seen, that maybe didn't interest me as a kid. You're not really into the dramas so much. You're just into action and that kind of shoot 'em up, blow 'em up stuff, which is cool. I still like that stuff, but now I'm watching a little more of the dramas and some of the other mystery and thriller movies that came out. And what I enjoy about old movies, it's not so much the plots and the acting, which it's kind of fun to see how it's evolved. Actually, a lot of acting in the 70s, 80s, 90s, depending on the director and the film, is actually a lot better than some of the acting now. It seems like these movies they just throw together and it's just kind of empty calorie consumption of movies, and same with music. It all sounds very factory produced and just not very emotionally impactful or anything. But yeah, aside from that, like, you know, the storylines in 80s movies aren't too intricate or crazy. But what I like is the little details. And I don't know if you're like this or just a weird quirk of mine, but I'll watch like a movie from the 80s and maybe it's like a cop, you know, police drama or murder mystery or something. And the scenes they filmed at the precinct, like in the offices where the detectives and police are, I just noticed stuff like them drinking coffee out of like styrofoam cups, which you don't see too much anymore. And it's just like, I just like looking at that stuff, seeing how it was. But because of environmentalism and all that and just changing trends, you don't see these little styrofoam cups. I remember when I was a kid, like my dad would take me for a coffee and donuts before early morning hockey practice. We'd have these 7 a.m. practices. When I was a kid, we'd get a donut and a coffee, and I remember they'd had the styrofoam cups, the really small ones. And I think 7-Eleven had them for quite a while, up until like maybe the late 90s or something. But yeah, there's stuff like that. And then like the telephones with the spiral cords, and you know, the chief or the police chief's on the phone, he like slams it down, the big receiver that, you know, you don't see these phones anymore. Or the you know, people using fax machines, or the big Apple computers, the big bulky things with just like the green text on the screen when they're doing their investigation or something. Just like little shit like that amuses me, that I like to watch. I know some people probably think it's like lame, like, you know, what's so interesting about that. But just to contrast the present and past and the present is, I think, what it is. It's just another form of entertainment, because if you've already seen the movie, you're not watching it to, you know, to see what happens and whatever. Another fun thing is like to see how the actors have aged, like how they are when they're young. Like, you know, you see like a young Michael Douglas or a young Brad Pitt, even though Brad's not, well, he's getting up there, but he's not that old. He still looks handsome as hell, but and still relevant today. But yeah, some of his movies in the 90s, you could see how he's changed a bit. And you know, Clooney and all these people that have been in showbiz forever. So yeah, that's kind of fun to notice and observe. So yeah, old movies, old music, it's all fun. It's all stuff I enjoy, and just getting that nostalgia feeling. It's overall positive. Like, I get a kick out of it. It's mostly good emotions, and I don't know if some people have the opposite effect, where an old song from their youth or an old movie they liked when they were young comes on. Like, do they get depressed or don't want to deal with it because it reminds them of a better time, and now they're older and they have more problems in their life and they're not young anymore, and maybe they don't feel the same way, so maybe they do some people avoid being nostalgic or avoid the past? I don't know. Maybe if you're one of those people, you can tell me, and it'd be interesting to know. Or is it just basically everybody feels the same way about me, or the same way as me? It makes sense. I mean, because nostalgia sells. I mean, you know, people still download old movies and listen to old music, so you know, it makes sense that it sells. And if you look at on YouTube, a lot of the reaction channels, it's like all older music. It's all young kids that haven't heard Nirvana or Soundgarden or Pearl Jam. or Foo Fighters, or a lot of these songs that are just discovering them now, that are being blown away by the music. So maybe there is something special. Maybe it was a golden era from like the late 60s to the late 90s. Maybe it was like a 30 or 40 year thing, and then it just evolved into something that's mediocre, and that's just how it is. I don't know. Maybe it's just a once in a millennium thing where the best, most interesting music, artistry, filmmaking was during this short period, and myself and maybe you watching were extremely lucky to have experienced it. It's hard to say. Maybe in 30 years it's a whole nother thing. Maybe AI, this technology creates stuff that's even more mind-blowing. I don't know. But that's one of the things I think why these albums and this music still resonate, because they were recorded during a different time with different technology and different tools. And there's a lot of imperfection, and there's a lot of, improvisation and, mistakes. And a lot of it was recorded on actual tape and then digitized later. So it's more real, like there's a human connection to it. As with a lot of the new music, it's so run through the Pro Tools and the auto tuning, and everything's very digital, and it comes out the other end when it's released sounding very machine manufactured, even though you can hear real guitars and it's real people singing and all that, all the pitch corrections and all that. The grunge albums are just full of like variation and not the best singing and raw emotion, and the melodies are came from the people's minds. They weren't produced by a machine or anything, so that probably has an impact. That's why the Beatles were so special. Just John and Paul, their ability to write melody was something otherworldly, something godly, you could say. And even like stuff like Nirvana, that level of sophisticated melody with loud guitars and loud drums and very catchy hooks, and all put together in this recipe that just blew people's minds, including mine. And what else? Yeah, nostalgia. I have this Woodstock shirt because a couple days ago I watched a documentary on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, it's about Woodstock 99. Of course there's Woodstock 69, and then they did one in 94, and then the last one in 99, which was the last one they ever did. And for various reasons, if you haven't seen the documentary, it's called Trainwreck, and it's like a 3-part documentary, so it's quite long, and it tells a story about Woodstock 99, how it started and what bands were there, and how it was a chain reaction of just insanity. And looking at the footage, like I remember Woodstock 99, watching it on Much Music, which was our version of MTV, but a lot of that was edited and filtered, and a lot of footage just wasn't released at the time. But in this documentary, they show some shit where it's like, wow, I didn't know it was that bad. Just the debauchery and the insanity that was happening. They completely tore that place apart, and it built and built, and it was a lot of it was blamed on the promoters and the people organizing the event. It wasn't organized well. They weren't weren't ready to accommodate almost 300,000 people, and it just spiraled out of control. And it was a powder keg of bad things, one after another. Like, it was hotter than they expected. People were going crazy from the heat. There were water issues, water plumbing. It was broken down. The porta potties were overflowing. And then the kids just started getting crazier and crazier. And it built up to this, where Limp Bizkit, their notorious set at Woodstock 99, where everyone just went completely apeshit. And it looked fun. I mean, it was interesting. I like these sort of rock and roll moments, even though it can get crazy. And unfortunately, I think some people, were injured. But all these fun that you can look back on and be like, wow, that was insane. That was rock and roll. I just love that type of shit, even though, there's obviously was a lot of douchebaggery and obnoxious people to the nth degree at this festival. But I won't spoil a lot of it for you. You should watch it, and a lot of you know how it ended. It just spiraled completely out of control. And I felt bad for a lot of the people that were there. I mean, they were witnessing a part of rock and roll history, but at the same time, there was a very extreme level of discomfort for some of the people, and especially late as the festival dragged on, the lack of water and the fact that the vendors, once the water was running out and, people were needing more food and more water, they really jacked up the prices. I think out near the end, they were charging $10 for a small bottle of water. Like, just they showed in the documentary, it was like this size, and like $10 just because they wanted to take advantage. And of course, that all that combined with the rest of this shit show, and the thing just spiraled into a full-on riot by the end. But you got to watch it. It's, especially if you grew up in the 90s and you kind of remember Woodstock 99, but you don't know all the details of it and exactly what happened. You got to watch it. It's called Trainwreck. It's on Netflix, and it's great. It'll definitely bring back memories. Actually, went to my car after or my Jeep, and put on some Limp Bizkit and was rocking out just because of that crazy that infamous set they had on the main stage at Woodstock. But yeah, I just thought I'd get on here and talk a little bit about my personal experience with nostalgia. I didn't even touch on the sports aspect of it. I look back to when I watched hockey when I was younger, some of the players and stuff that I think about, that are long since retired. A lot of times when I hang out with my friends, we joke and talk about old hockey players and stuff. So yeah, nostalgia has got a lot of different avenues to it. Maybe for you it might be toys or collectibles. I'm not really into that so much. My sister has a couple bobbleheads of old wrestling. Wrestling, again, another nostalgia trip. I go back and watch Attitude Era pay-per-views now that WWE is on Netflix. I watch some of that old shit now, and brings back good memories, good times. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks again for all who have subscribed. And if you're new to the channel, if you like this, hit the like, thumbs up, and consider subscribing, maybe sharing this video, sharing some of the other videos. I'm still a very small YouTuber trying to grow, and if you're a small YouTuber, let's help each other. You follow me, I'll follow you back, or subscribe back. Yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, what your favorite things of the past are, and whether you think it's good to reminisce, or if it's good to leave the past behind. Some argue the past isn't real and the future isn't real. All that's real is this present moment. I can agree with that to some extent, but I know having a memory and being able to look back and feel things and remember things is definitely a huge part of the human experience as well. So anyways, again, wish you all a good night, or if it's good morning to you where you are, have an excellent Sunday. Enjoy the week. God bless you, and you take care of yourself and each other.